All right, take one, Karen McMahon, Lifetime Achievement Award winner. So Karen, let's first talk about your career from start to finish. Tell us a little bit about your life in ag journalism.
Um, my career probably started when I grew up on a farm in northwest Iowa. I was actually Farmer Brown's daughter from Iowa, corn, soybeans, cattle, and hogs. And then I went off to South Dakota State University where I had no intention of having anything to do with farming. But then I ended up in journalism and took an internship at our hometown 5-day-a-week newspaper, and I got pigeonholed into farm writing, which was pretty good because I was related to probably half of the county's farmers, so it was quite the job. And then after I graduated in mass communications, I came back to Le Mars, Iowa, and worked on the Daily Sentinel for probably 2.5 to 3 years, where I was farm editor. The exciting thing during that time was pseudorabies became epidemic and decimated a lot of the hogs in the state. So that was my first big, exciting news that I was able to cover. So from the Sentinel, I met up with John Burns somewhere along the line at a hog meeting, and he hired me to come to Minneapolis, the big city, and work at Miller Publishing on Hog Farm Management magazine, which sounds rather gloomy, but it was a wonderful time because everybody who worked on those publications at Miller were young and all very excellent writers and photographers, and there was just so much to learn. Also, it was the first time that I really traveled for a job. I got credit cards and flew out to North Carolina and other areas around the country, and it was just quite an education. But what was also interesting was they encouraged me, John Burns and Dave Halsey was working there at the time, encouraged me to join or come to AAEA. And when I went to that first national meeting, I thought, wow, this is where I belong. I just remember it was just a wonderful, eye-opening experience and something I wanted to be a part of. So from then on, I've been to just about every single meeting. There was one in the 90s when I had just given birth to our son, so I missed that one. But anyway, it's been AAEA has played a big role in my life. But from Miller Publishing, I then went to, through the Hog Connections, I was offered a job at the National Pork Producers Council in Des Moines. And this was another great experience because they were not, they didn't have a national checkoff at the time, so it was a little more modest. But they were looking for somebody to improve their communications out to pork producers to show their value. So they wanted me to come on staff and start a magazine as well as a couple other publications, a tabloid that went out to pork producers. So in my limited experience, I helped them start up a 4-color large magazine that came out twice a year. I don't think it lasted much longer than a year or two, but I sure had a learning experience because I had to hire a printer, and an agency, of course, was who really came to bat and helped put together that whole magazine, but even working on postage issues and everything. So it was quite a learning experience. So from there, I got married and moved to Cedar Falls, Iowa, where there wasn't a lot of job opportunities, except at that time, Farm Journal decided that they would hire people to work freelance, or not hire. Let me start that over. Farm Journal was looking to start a program of contract writers where you work from home and would produce stories, and you would be part of the team or part of the, what am I trying to say?
Yeah, it was a team of
A team.
freelance writers.
Yeah. And so it was the first time that anybody really worked at home, I think, back then. And Pam Henderson was one, and I was one. Meg Gage, does she work at home? Maybe I better stop that.
Okay.
At the time, Farm Journal hired some contract writers, and I was one of them, and I worked from home on a freelance basis. And yet I had to produce so much every month. But that was a way I was able to stay involved, have children, and further my career, and I was still a part of AAEA. So I did that with Farm Journal and had some wonderful folks. I got to know Dean Houghton was an editor, and of course Greg Lamp, he was doing some work with Farm Journal and the later part of that. And so that lasted 10 years. What am I trying to think? Okay. So after 10 years, then I was ready to go back into the workforce full time, and Dale Miller was looking for a managing editor at National Hog Farmer. So I was ready to move to Minneapolis with the family, and I started working for Dale, whom I'd known ever since I started writing on Hog Magazine. So I worked with Dale for 5 years, and within Penton, what was later Penton Media. Well, it's hard to gather all that in, isn't it? There are so many different companies. Okay, so
Web
from
being one of them.
yeah. So from National Hog Farmer, I went to work on Farm Industry News, and that's where I stayed until 2013 when I went full-time freelance writing again. And while I was with Farm Industry News, it was a wonderful opportunity. I became editor in 2000 and worked with a great staff that, included, who did it include? Wayne Wenzel? No.
I don't think you even need to go into that.
No.
No.
Okay. And since 2013, then I've been freelancing and loving the opportunity to do whatever I really want to do. And I've worked with some great people, most of them through contacts in AAEA and Ag Media Summit. So it's been a great career, and I'm still doing some freelance writing.
Awesome. So as you look over the decades in the business that you had, are there any special memories, any special anecdotes that come to mind that are important to you?
I have to think. Okay. I think one of the biggest things that happened to me was when I became involved with Ag Media Summit and the development of it. And that occurred while I was working at National Hog Farmer and Farm Industry News. It just happened that it was our 75th anniversary of AAEA. It was held in town, and we had a meeting of people, including livestock publication folks and the publishers, and it was held in our office. And that group became the group that led this forward, and it morphed into quite an organization. And I'm very proud to say that, I was in on the beginning of it and helped it shepherd it through, and there are a lot of folks here that have done that same thing. And we were able to keep AAEA alive, I want to say, because it was losing membership. Our meetings only had maybe 200 people at them, and then Ag Media Summit has grown significantly. So that's one of the biggest moments, I think, for me.
So you were one of the leaders of AAEA without question. In fact, you served as president. What did that teach you about the business of ag communications and how important that was to you?
What I learned through this whole process is how a group of people who have very different ideas about things can really come together and compromise and come up with something that will help a lot of people, that will meet the needs of a lot of folks. And that's what we saw happening with Ag Media Summit. I mean, we addressed public relations folks, sales and editorial, and all across the line. So to me, it was a great gathering of the minds when we pulled this all together, all to a great benefit of many of us.
Any particular mentors that you can think of over the years that helped direct your career?
Well, I have to say the first big one in agriculture had to be John Burns, who mentored me at Hog Farm Management. And then later he was my contact with Farm Journal. And he is the one who taught me how to freelance and how to work with freelancers. So, and he shepherded me through that time period. Later, when I was on Farm Industry News, and even today, I work with all freelancers. It really taught me how to stay in contact with them, what you need, how to talk to them about what you want, and be clear in your communications. So he was a big one.
So as a seasoned veteran in ag communications, any advice for young people today as they get into their career in this business of ag communications?
Wow, I haven't thought about that. I just advice to young folks today. I think keep your mind open. Go ahead,
I
Greg.
would say start it over and just go. I think if I had some advice to give,
Okay. If I have some, okay, for new people coming, now what do I want to say? As I look back over my career, there are a few things or a little bit of advice I might pass along. And one of that is to stay open to new technology. What we've seen throughout our career has been unbelievable. I mean, there were barely computers when I started. And when I moved to National Hog Farmer, we had to convince that management to move into computers. It was just so, and then over the times, you've got to keep up on it. And I think just be open to it. And today, you know, I'm writing for publications that are only online. So go with it. Stay current and follow what your kids are doing, kind of thing, you know? And stay open to social media and everything. So
That's awesome. You said some things earlier that we can fit into this segment about staying in touch with people and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. So we can cut and paste that.
I think you should hold off for a second because
Yeah.